Legacy Week 14 is always stressful. This particular one, though, there was a few of us who were just chilling and everyone else who was fighting. And when it came down to it came down to a key loss and 5 key points. 5 points. Whole season. Playoffs. It's just not fair, but it is awesome. When it comes to Week 14, it's tricky because I know in NFL sense, the playoff run is really just getting started. And so as the fan of the sport in me, there's certain things I would talk about. For example, we keep talking about Chiefs in media and things like that and how they might technically still be mathematically in, but how Reed's kind of FU fourth down calls are a little bit ridiculous. And we could talk about analytics and how, yeah, sure, maybe it always makes sense to go on fourth down, but it does not factor in things like momentum. And I know you're not supposed to care about that, but at the same time, a fatigued defense and constantly, repeatedly going at them, that does mean something. It also means something when your defense is actually more consistent or reliable than your offense. And I don't know how well that factors out. But even now, I'm probably boring you and you're thinking, I don't care about football. I care about my fantasy team. And in Week 14, that's where we're at, where it's really hard to be an NFL fan. You're kind of your own team's fan. And with that being said, I can't help but think of some of the knock-on effects. For example, if it's not a keeper league, most of them aren't, you might never draft Jalen Hurts again if you started him this week and you needed something from him. 2 turnovers in the same play is something you can't forget. And there is a significant chance that he cost people an actual playoff spot or a seeding spot this week. If you're looking at it that way, it's more of the grudges we bear and the things that we carry. Now, we already know now if you made the playoffs or didn't make the playoffs or what seed or spot you had. So it's kind of redundant to look back at Week 14. Even when I started looking at some of the statistics I wanted to look at or I would normally talk about, my head is already in the playoffs and what's happening this week. And if they're going to be repeated trends and patterns and what that says about us. For example, right now you have in the past couple weeks, Josh Allen and then Seattle's defense as probably the top 2 scorers consistently amongst all mediums. But what does that mean? Shedeur Sanders, I think, was the second highest starting quarterback. You going to trust him in your playoff game? Who do you really want to be in your first round playoff game? Even now, speaking to a bunch of people, there's a handful of people that are out and are going to be consolation. There's a couple people that got the bye. So in every league, there's only a handful of people that are actually playing this week. And you might have some of the more difficult decisions to go on. Do you want to go and try and get someone off the waiver wire? Or do you want to play like Justin Jefferson, who's done nothing for you all year, but kind of was your guy in the first round? Significant questions. I think also looking ahead, there's some really interesting matchups football-wise that are going to be huge for this week. Where do you sit on the AFC East? Do you think that most valuable player means the player who has the most value to your team? If so, Josh Allen's probably your guy. Or is it the best player on right now one of the best teams? That'd be Drake May. And they're going to get after it this week, and it's going to be super entertaining. Do we care about history? You've got Goff and Stafford, and they're going to play each other again. And I mean, it's kind of like we're getting to that age, or I'm at that age, where some people's relationships have worked and some aren't. And when you have those co-parenting situations, like, are we just supposed to pretend that they didn't get traded for each other and like family swapped? And one of them won the Super Bowl or like moved on with an attractive other partner. And the other one is Goff. We just pretending he's happy with this? Is this going to be an FU game for him? Or is this going to be the Rams cementing themselves as the best offense? A lot of football questions, a lot of fantasy sports questions. Let's focus on the fantasy sports and get on to our league, though. After his start, you might have thought he was going to miss the playoffs, but no, Connor once again gets in there and is going to be just a pain in the mix here. Now, how exactly that went down, we'll get to that in the next couple matchups, but we know that he does make it in, and he did have the performance when he needed it. This was the high score of the week, and if we take a look, it wasn't like it was dominant all the way through. I mean, Etienne, I think, was running back 6, so just out of the top 5. Same with Watson. He was just there. QB1, though, if you double down on your predicted, not too shabby. Now, on Rushke's side, he did not need the win. Burrow was the QB4, so him coming in with a little bit more reinforcement on the quarterback position is certainly going to help him out. If we look at their bench, not a whole lot. I mean, Trevor Lawrence here, but he didn't need too much help. Did avoid the negative, which is always a positive, not to make too much of a pun there. But let's see, because now we're going to get into matchups, and both of these teams are going to be familiar with each other in round 1. While someone gets in, that means at least 2 people were pretty disappointed. I'd actually say 3, because remember, the winner of this was going to be in contention. Gene's probably pretty disappointed. He came out of the gate pretty hot, and if you remember, he is kind of our returning champions in case of the success of this league. So this is actually quite a big deal for Gene, but I'm sure he's still spending all of our money, so he'll get over it pretty quick. He did go over his predicteds. He did have an RA game. RB4 performance from Barkley, which he hasn't gotten a lot of this year. Looking at the bench, I mean, Atlanta's bagel is not what he was looking for, but not a whole lot of options on the bench. I'd say the even more disappointed person, and we're going to see why at the end of this, it came down to decimal points, and had Tim hit his predicted, he actually would be in the playoffs instead. Stafford had a great position or great performance. Quarterback 6. Gibbs has been the all-star, and so I think anyone in the top 6 is actually quite happy that Tim's not there, because Gibbs has been a weak winner. He was the running back 1. Unfortunately, he didn't have a whole lot more on the go. If you look at his bench, he did have the tight end 5, but one of the kickers of the tight end is we had the number 1 tight end and the number 5 tight end. Everybody else was open. So tight end position is one of those, defense as well, and running back, where we had some people on the waiver wire that could have helped some people out. In this case, Tim, almost anything would have gotten you in there. Any change, it didn't work out that way. And Gene, the rain had to end sometime. As it goes for a new reign, now Jeff hasn't won the title quite yet, but at least he was number 1 coming out of the gate here, going into the playoffs. That does come with a little bit of love with it, so he's pretty happy. And I think we can see that maybe it's his wide receivers that are getting him there. And in this particular case, that was a wide receiver 1 and the wide receiver 4 on the week. Those were kind of Jeff's dominant performances. Starting 2 running backs in the same backfield doesn't matter when your wide receivers are this dang good. Now, his flex didn't really help him out too well, and I think coming into the playoffs, he's going to want to make sure he gets some guys. But he did have a big bye week, not surprisingly. A few of us kind of were dealing with that. Playing Marco, who did not need this. I mean, he was going to make the playoffs anyway, fighting for seeding. We'll see how this works out for him in the end. Fortunately, Marco, you did have the tight end 1, so great call there. And like I said, that's even more special considering 2, 3, and 4 were just sitting there. You got big time hurt, though, and I don't envy your decision coming into the playoffs, because obviously he's one of the guys who got you there, and this was just not the performance you needed. Higgins did fantastic, though. He was the wide receiver 5, so unfortunate that he's out for you there, too. 2 bummers going into the playoffs. Who needs that? When I mentioned at the beginning that there were some people who were upset, this is probably the number 1. If you are Rennie, it was a win, and you're in situation going against the 10th person in the league. Now, granted, we're not looking at a massive win differential here, but it was essentially the 10th, and unfortunately, Rennie, your guys let you down. One guy in particular, coming into Monday night, you were still thinking life was in your favor here. Had he hit his predicteds, you would be in the playoffs, which was, I think, most people's predicteds. On the flip side of that coin, Timmy, if you're going to fight, you got to get dirty. You definitely did. Wide receiver 2 performance from Michael Wilson. Who saw that one coming? It did not balance the defense 1, and this has been, as I said, Seattle's defense has been a league winner or a week winner for the last little bit. Unfortunately for Rennie, it just came short. I'm not going to go through all of the issues. You did have some, you didn't have a whole lot of love on the bench. You made the best decisions you could. There were some answers. Pollard and Corum would have helped you out on the running back, but it was not your running backs. It was your wide receivers, and like I said, live with Mahomes, die with Mahomes. In this particular case, he cost you. Would have been nice to not finish with 2 weeks in a row. That's what I did. There you go. But Double B here, the newest Jason and Josh both needed this, and they got it. So they're definitely in the playoffs. Aside from the fact that neither one of us really seemed like we want to win this. Like Love, that was great. That was QB5. And then 2 of my three receivers actually did show up, and that's been kind of a case for me. But if we look all the way down, I did have a massive buy issue. We take a look. I wasn't just lying. I got a ton here on the bench and some big guys that I usually play. A negative is just never what you want to see in that case. Thinking what could go wrong, and you trust a Jet. I should know better. I really, really should. Nobody else really went off. I did have some guys, obviously, I was pretty okay with, but I needed to not have negatives. On the flip side of that, you put in a quarterback who no longer has a leg. Well, no longer has an Achilles, but he didn't have a leg going into not having an Achilles. You did have the tight end 5 performance. Or sorry, 6, not 5. But that was about it. And your bench, Rodgers would have been a nice trick instead of someone with only one leg, but I'm assuming he might come out in the playoffs. Either way, we're both making it. We're not playing each other right away. Let's get into what the playoff matchups actually look like. Before we get to that, just a quick look in what I was talking about. So obviously I said, Rennie, if it was a win, you're in. You would have been there, and actually you would have been in 5th spot, pushing this down and actually changing the matchups. Because of the loss, taking a look at this, 5 points, not even 5 points. Youcher. That sucks, buddy. Sorry, man. That's about as close as I think we've come in a 6-7 situation. But also, you got to love a league that's this close until it's this close and it's not in your favor. So, but now we have to see top 4 or top 6, bottom 4. Everybody's got to buy except for 4 people. Let's check out those matchups. We like it so much, we're going to run it again, like I said, so there should be no surprises here. We've got the high guns here from Connor. We know Josh Allen's going to be an issue. Jonathan Taylor, I know he's hoping for a bounce back. Seattle's not the greatest matchup, but he does have the bye issues sorted out. On the flip side, Kent, it's doubling down. When it's your team and your guys, you got a running back and a quarterback representing your boys, a healthy mix of the AFC East running in the backfield, and Burrow coming back could not have come back at a better time. Are these going to be your actual rosters? We don't know, but right now it looks pretty close. This one looked pretty close because yes, Marco was down by 5, but if we scroll all the way down, he currently has someone that I'm going to go ahead and bet he is not going to end up playing. And then Thursday night happened, and this is a normal overperformance. Bijan, that could have been worse. I have seen leagues where this was a lot worse. But either way, that's the start you want on your Thursday night. Right now, no matter who Marco puts in, I don't think they'll have a 16 projected. So we are looking at the rookies, Jason and Josh, probably coming into Sunday as the favorite. But that doesn't mean a whole lot. Marco's been calling himself the league winner for a while. Let's see if he can hold up to it. Legacy, looking into week 15, I know we're going to get excited. It's the playoffs, but this is always the weird time in fantasy sports because of the 10 of us, 4 are waiting to see about the basement. Side note, I'd be more than open to talking about a potential consequence for the ultimate loser. I think it's funny. Doesn't have to be money-based. Can just be embarrassing video-based. Think about it. I'll come back to that one later. You all get a bye because yours doesn't start until next week because we all want to finish at the same time. Not going to make a joke about that. Top 2, we get the bye. Good for us. That does mean, though, there are 2 teams that get the semifinal bid. You're the ones who are active, you're the ones we're paying attention to, and you're the ones who care a whole lot more about week 15. Best of luck to all of you.